Chapter 14. Cameron rolled the tension out of his shoulders, wondering how to make conversation with someone who'd been in prison for the past few months, someone who had murdered his girlfriend's parents. "How's work? Did you see that game last night? This weather's been hot, huh?" None of those sounded appropriate. Cameron took a deep breath, hoping the tightness in his chest would alleviate. It didn't. His father behind glass, the man he used to admire and look up to the most. How did this happen? How'd they get here? "How have you been, son?" Cameron looked up and thought to himself, "Well, not great. For starters, work had been terrible. I've been forgetting stuff like crazy. And when I look into my girlfriend's beautiful yet tear-filled eyes, I see a reflection of you, Dad. How many sleepless nights have you been responsible for?" Cameron swallowed those comments and said, "Pretty good. Besides this whole memory thing, Annika and I have been doing well. Work's fine. I've picked up some more patients, some really sweet kids." "That's good. So, how have you been?" Cameron asked. Donald sighed, pushing the books and papers aside. "Okay. In some ways, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. The loneliness is what's worse. Sometimes the ringing in your ears gets too loud to bear. And then other times, the inmates won't be quiet and the TVs are so loud I wish they'd put me in solitary confinement." Cameron's eyes burned. "But on the positive side, my cellmates are okay. There's a Bible study that's been going on across from us, led by one of the other prisoners. Once a week, a pastor of a nearby church comes by and prays with whoever wants it." "Wow, that's great." "There's not much else to do, so sometimes I'll listen in." He shook his head, tears gleaming. "All your life, I never really embraced that faith. Didn't think I needed it. Only needed you and your mother." He smiled sadly. "And now I've lost you both." "No, Dad, you haven't lost me. I'm still here for you." Cameron paused, folding his hands together. "And about faith and a relationship with God, it's not too late to learn." "How can you and Annika be so kind to me?" he suddenly asked. Yet he was so quiet, Cameron wondered if he heard correctly. "After everything I've done." "God, please guide my words." Cameron let out a breath. "Dad, I love you. I always will. I just hate what you did. But what matters is what you do now. If you ask the Lord, He will forgive you, give you a clean slate." His father's Adam's apple bobbed. "That sounds similar to what was being preached yesterday." Cameron found a smile. "Would you like me to pray for you, Dad?" No, I'm okay. Thank you. Maybe next time." He went back to the books, back to safe and comfortable topics. Yet hope sparked inside Cameron. Maybe next time. Annika poured some coffee into a mug and served it to Cameron. Over the phone, he had said the visit with his father had gone relatively well, and Dr. Baines had promised to do his best to find answers. But right now, Cameron seemed to be weighed down with a burden so heavy, Annika felt it extend to her shoulders. "You okay?" she asked. Yeah. He took a swallow of the steaming liquid. "Seeing my dad face to face, though, was so much harder than I thought it was going to be." Annika rested a hand on his shoulder. "I know. I had been wanting to see him for so long, so badly. When I finally get there..." Cameron sighed heavily. "There are so many things running through my mind. Guilt, betrayal, shame, sadness, just awkward feelings. This man used to be like my best friend. How could I have not seen this? And I've forgiven him. I know God forgives as we do. But I also know Dad needs to suffer the consequences of his actions. He's going to spend the rest of his life in prison." He groaned and covered his face with his hands. Throat burning, Annika knelt on the booth seat and hugged him. "Please help us, Lord," she prayed softly. Warm tears dripping onto Cameron's shirt, Annika stayed there, eyes closed, head on his shoulder, arms around him. We need you, Father. Brian tugged at the collar of his pressed shirt. They always kept it too hot at the office. Tapping at the keyboard, Brian had a gulp of his water. Even the water was warm. Laura's heels announced her arrival to his cubicle. Here's that report you wanted. She slapped the file on his desk. Hey, Laura, grab me some iced coffee from the front, will you? Get it yourself, Bri. I'm super busy. Come on. She was already leaving, her ponytail bouncing and swishing. He sighed, spinning in his chair. Yes, thank you for clearing this up, Fuller was saying. Brian rose, eyeing his boss and a man he didn't recognize. They spoke for another minute, shook hands, and then the man left. Brian followed his boss at a quick and efficient pace. What's going on? Fuller glanced back at him, not slowing. The company audit has been completed. And? My suspicions have been confirmed. Patrick was stealing from the company. Brian scoffed. That skunk. How much did he end up taking? Fuller huffed out a breath, grabbing a few files from his desk. 252,000. Whoa! That guy was really going places. So now what? Well, the police say they can't find the money. Surprise, surprise. I bet Patrick had it hidden somewhere. Maybe in a Swiss bank account. Fuller gave him a long, hard stare. You've been watching too many movies, Blake. He turned back to his paperwork. Even if the police do find the money, who knows how long they'll keep it in evidence. Could be months before I get it back. In the meantime, I need to figure out if any of the girls in accounting were helping Patrick steal. He wiped his glasses with a handkerchief. Either they're all complete ditzes or one of them was his partner. You know, what if one of them wasted Patrick? Brian asked. If he did have a partner, that's likely who killed him. You think one of the girls killed him? One of our people? He shrugged. Hey, I'm just saying. What if Patrick told, say, Kelly, that he would give her a percentage of whatever he stole in a month? Then he held out on her, and she lost it and killed him. It's possible, I suppose, but let's not jump to conclusions. It's not like you're a trained investigator. Or maybe one of them found out he was stealing, confronted him about it. Then he tried to kill them, and they killed him in self-defense. Replacing his glasses, Fuller brushed past him. All this supposing is getting us nowhere, Blake. I'm going to talk to them directly. Brian followed, having to jog to keep up. Or what about Laura? We know she had a history with him. What if Patrick agreed to take her back if she held him? Then he burned her by staying with his current girlfriend. What's her name? Cindy, or... I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. Celia, that's it. I knew it would come to me. So yeah, Laura was already seething with jealousy, so she went to his house to beg him to take her back, and when he didn't, she put 2 slugs in his chest. Fuller faced him, stopping in his tracks. Blake! He put up his hands. Last one, I promise. What if Celia killed him after she realized Patrick was leaving her for Laura? Or what if you killed him? Brian blinked. What? He let out a chuckle. You can't be serious. Fuller crossed his arms. Well, since we're supposing, you and he weren't exactly best friends, Blake. As often as you got into it here at the office, it makes me wonder how far you would go, especially if there were no witnesses. Look, I never touched the guy. Even here at the office, all we ever did was argue. Okay, I admit I couldn't stand him, but murder? Come on. Brian put out his hands. Why would I? I don't know. Not my job to figure it out, though, is it? He resumed his march down the hall. Well, you know, I wasn't the only one who didn't like him. There were others. You, for example. Fuller froze, and then turned halfway. I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but you had just as good a reason to blow him away. Thinking and suspecting all that time he was stealing. Fuller's eyes blazed. Get back to work.